specific restitution, we can wait a few moments, specific restitution-related issues in this case, pursuant to the provisions of Penal Code Section 1202.4, and be prepared to address any matters of restitution. Certainly, counsel are aware of the Realignment Act and the provisions of Penal Code Section 1170, Subdivision H. I do want sentencing memoranda filed by the people and by the defense in this case. Is there anything else to address at this juncture, Mr. Walgan?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Chernoff?
No, Judge.
Thank you. For purposes of these proceedings, Dr. Murray's remanded, and the court is going to take a few moments to talk with the jurors, and members of the court staff will be talking to the jurors as well. We are in recess. We are adjourned.
You've been watching the court proceedings in the Conrad Murray trial, and certainly an image that will be for a while is Conrad Murray sitting with his hands cuffed behind his back. It was ongoing, and then the judge said, you can hold on a moment, so that allowed him to lean back. But Dana Cole has told us before that this was a possibility, and Conrad Murray is going to go directly to jail. He will not stay out on bail as he awaits his sentencing, which is coming November 29th.
And the judge went over his reasons one by one, the 5 options he had to consider, gave his reasoning for each one. And it's a bit shocking, though, that he is being remanded to custody from what we heard from Dana Cole and other legal experts.
Before we go outside, we do know we have the reporters outside who will describe the scene outside, but again, quickly, Dana is here with us, and as we still describe what's going on inside, Dana, you suggested defense might have even known that this was going to happen in their choice of the sentencing date being so quick.
Yeah, it seemed like the judge had indicated prior to the jury verdict being read what he would do in the event, simply because the defense attorney's argument to the judge seemed, very sort of slight, nothing major. I think he was resigned to the fact that this is what the judge was going to do. Also, there was an indication that he asked for an early setting of a sentencing date. Normally, if your client's going to stay out on bond, you're going to set the sentencing a couple months down the road. Okay,
Dana, thanks very much for that. Let's go live to Carlos Granda outside. He was with dozens of people out there as the verdict was read. Carlos.
It has been jubilation, celebration out here in this section of the sidewalk. These are all the Michael Jackson supporters. As soon as they heard the guilty verdict, this is what happened, and as you can see, it's been going on now for 10, 15 minutes. People here very excited, very happy at what has happened. And let me see if I can talk to them. Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Your thoughts on the guilty verdict?
I think it's wonderful. There's finally justice for Michael Jackson.
Were you worried that it would not be guilty? I mean, you
no.
Were concerned.
No, absolutely not.
Why do you think Dr. Murray was guilty?
It was gross negligence. He was a doctor. He was to do no harm, and he did great harm to Michael. He did not take good care of him.
Thank you very much. Thank you for talking to us. Could I ask you again your thoughts when you heard the guilty verdict?
Excellent. I couldn't be more happier. Victory for Michael after 2 years. Waited a long time, but this is for Mike. We love you, Mike. We love you, Mike.
When we spoke earlier, you said you were concerned because it could go either way.
It could go either way. That's the justice system. But today was a victory for Michael and his family. Really for the family.
Why do you think Dr. Murray is guilty?
Simple reason, he didn't call 911. That's the basic thing you should do. Somebody stop breathing, you call 911. He didn't do that. Michael could still be alive, and maybe he just did that one thing. So, for that reason, he's guilty. Justice has been served today. This is for you, Michael! Peace, baby, victory!
Can I ask you the same thing, your thoughts on the guilty verdict? Your thoughts on the guilty verdict?
Oh my gosh, I'm elated. I'm ecstatic. He is guilty, and I'm glad that he's going behind bars. He won't be able to do anything like this again.
Describe your feeling when you heard the verdict coming down.
It was a sense of relief for the family and for Michael. He's at peace. We love you, Michael.
Thank you so much. You can see here just a few of the people here that have been waiting. Again, hundreds of people out here waiting for this verdict, and they're still here. They're actually just waiting to hear all the details about this. People here say they're not ready to go home yet. Reporting live from the sidewalk right outside the criminal courts building, I'm Carlos Granda, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Carlos, thank you very much. Again, a jury has found Michael Jackson's doctor, Conrad Murray, guilty of involuntary manslaughter, and then if there is a surprise today, he was taken away in handcuffs, remanded straight to custody. Let's go to Robert Olguin. He's outside, a little calmer where you are, Robert.
That's right, Carlos, across the street from me on Temple, but this is still a very, I suppose, energized scene, if you will, because there's still a lot of fans that are walking up and down what is a busy street here as more and more people are starting to gather outside of the courthouse. Now that the verdict is known, presumably more people will start heading down here because a lot of people are just waiting for the Jackson family now to make their exit from the courthouse. But really, what a dramatic afternoon inside that courtroom, especially the image of Dr. Conrad Murray being placed into handcuffs, being led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Prosecutor David Walgren had said he wanted him remanded into custody, basically taken into custody without bail. The defense argued this is a non-violent offender, a first-time offender. He is not a flea risk. But Judge Michael Pastor made it very clear. He said this is a homicide case. He said this is someone who died. Michael Jackson's death caused by someone's negligence. That is what Dr. Conrad Murray was convicted of. So he placed him into custody straight out of the courtroom. Bailiffs, or rather sheriff's deputies, took him away in handcuffs and now headed down, presumably, to Twin Towers, to the county jail. This is a sentencing that could have happened within the next couple of weeks, is what we're being told right now. I'm getting some conflicting dates. I understand November 29th was a date that was thrown out there. But Dr. Conrad Murray now facing the possibility of 4 years in prison and the loss of his medical license. That's almost guaranteed now with this conviction. Don't know if it's just a matter of procedure now. As for what's happening out here, you might hear the cars honking their horns as more and more people get word. There's one there right on cue. As more and more people get word now of this verdict. So a lot of Michael Jackson supporters very, of course, energized and excited about the fact that Dr. Conrad Murray was found guilty. As far as Conrad Murray's supporters, we haven't heard from many walking on this side of the street here, but again, there weren't very many of them who were out here in the first place, but presumably they're quite disappointed by today's verdict. And again, Dr. Conrad Murray taken into custody, handcuffs placed around his wrists, led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, headed right now to a jail cell. Reporting from outside the county, from the criminal courts building, Robert Olguin, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Right, Robert, thank you very much. And again, we've heard from Carlos Granda, now Robert Olguin. We want to go to Rob Hayes. He's near where we might hear from Steve Cooley before too very long. All of this, of course, the reaction from the guilty verdict of involuntary manslaughter for Conrad Murray. Rob.
Yeah, we're down in the pit right now. This is where members of the Jackson family are expected to talk, if they do agree to talk, about the verdict that was just announced. When that verdict was announced, a huge cry erupted out here, as you heard Robert and Carlos explain. There were chants of justice, justice, and we're outside the courthouse right now, and we're waiting for members of the Jackson family to come out. We heard Jermaine had just left the courtroom. Of course, he's up on higher floors, and it may take a while to get back down to the ground level where we are right now. But it's really kind of a sporting atmosphere out here. The minute that verdict was announced, a huge roar went up. Some of the fans were a bit discouraged. We saw some of the supporters of Conrad Murray. I saw one take his sign and throw it on the ground. He was obviously unhappy with the verdict. But again, we are positioned outside the courthouse doors, and we are waiting for members of the Jackson family or prosecutors. We understand prosecutors, if they do talk, is going to be on the 12th floor. But we're standing by right now waiting for any developments.
Okay. All right, Rob Hayes, thanks very much for that. I want to give you some information just coming in from our reporter Miriam Hernandez inside the courtroom that after the verdict was read, the Jackson family members, they hugged prosecutors, and Michael Jackson's mother, Catherine Jackson, kissed Walgren, the lead prosecutor, on the cheek. We are waiting for a statement by the district attorney's office. We're expecting that any moment now down at the courthouse. And right now we're going to go to as
well, we'll
we
just
take a
continue.
live
One of
look.
the
We'll
things that you were talking about was the emotion shown by the Jackson family, which was strikingly in contrast to some of the proceedings that we saw, because we, of course, the camera in the courtroom, we did not see the people in attendance, we did not see the jury, but we did see the main participants. And the thing that struck me is, while the family obviously was emotional, the other players weren't. The prosecutors seemed to know this was coming. The defense seemed to know this was coming. Even Conrad Murray was not surprised, by my view, that this was coming. Miriam Hernandez was in the courtroom, and she may be able to give us more of an idea as to what happened there. Miriam, what can you tell us? I see you have some experts with you as well.
Yes, I do. Let me tell you first about what was going on in the courtroom. Instantly, as soon as that verdict was read, there was just muffled shrieks behind me. The whole line of Jacksons just could not help but exclaim their joy in the verdict. And this is after Judge Pastor had admonished them that there would be no exclamation, no visible signs, no verbal signs of how they felt about the verdict, but they just could not contain themselves. The entire Jackson family behind me were clasping hands, some were praying, and I can tell you that Randy Jackson had his arm around Catherine, and that Jermaine was holding hands with some of his siblings and some of his family members, and they were all just there holding tight, hoping that this would be the verdict that they had wanted for so long. The jury coming in very, very sober-faced, very, very solemn. There was no sense of being upbeat or relieved that they had gotten to this point where they could deliver a verdict. They were just very serious about finally delivering on their responsibilities, their solemn responsibilities, to complete their deliberations and do their jobs. They were so sober-faced, no cracking of a smile. They did not look over to the Jackson family for any of their, for any feedback whatsoever. I have to note that about 6 of them were dressed in black, which sometimes can signal just the serious nature of their disposition. After the verdict, again, a lot of reaction, then reaction again, tears when from the family of Conrad Murray when the Judge Pastor decided that the defendant would be remanded into custody, be handcuffed and taken away by the sheriff's deputies. Conrad Murray's mother was present. Perhaps one of his children. There were several people in the row that were sitting with Conrad Murray's mother who were in tears. But of course, the Jacksons, they were all sobbing throughout this proceeding. As soon as the verdict was read, they just started weeping. Catherine Jackson, especially, I heard her behind me, and Jermaine Jackson. I looked behind me, and he certainly had tears in his eyes. I can tell you that they were very restrained in trying not to be too noisy in the courtroom after that admonition from the judge. But afterwards, when the judge stepped off the bench, the whole line of Jacksons went past the prosecutors, Deborah Brazil and David Walgren, and they hugged him. LaToya was the first in line. They hugged Deborah Brazil, and Catherine Jackson even kissed David Walgren on the cheek to say thank you. Now, in previous hearings, the fans have been outside just very, very jubilant, very, very anxious to show their support of the prosecutors in this case. At times, this courtroom has turned from a place of great solemnity and reverence to almost like the tunnels in the Coliseum, because as the prosecutors go down the hallway, the jurors have just cheered them, just applauded and said yes. But the sheriff's deputies today were able to contain all that enthusiasm and make sure that the fans, the Michael Jackson fans, were quiet. I can tell you it gets very, very noisy in the hallway when this happens, and there are other cases that are being heard here on the 9th floor. But today, the Jackson fans just took the verdict in stride. I'm certain there was quite a bit of reaction outside, but in the hallway there was nothing. So that's the latest from inside the courtroom.
this
Back to you.
entire time since he was arrested.
All right, Miriam, thank you very much. And so, Miriam, giving you the eyewitness account of what it was like to be inside the courtroom as the Conrad Murray guilty verdict was read. Guilty again of involuntary manslaughter, and he was immediately remanded to custody, which many people thought, given prior criminal history, that maybe he wouldn't, but the judge spelled it out in, I guess, 5 points why he was planning to do this, specifically saying this was a felony. He was guilty of a felony, and it was, very